Hello, everybody. Why am I reading this? I know my name. I'm Gary James. Welcome to our February 2026 Americans for Legal Reform monthly meeting. I want to welcome everybody. We have a few new faces here. And so for the new people, we're just going to give a little bit of update of things that are going on. At the beginning, give people a chance to join our Facebook Live. Anybody who's watching this when it's not live, if you have any questions, you can type them in and we'll see if the appropriate person can answer. You can do it if you're watching live, and we'll see if Jim Kelly can read out the questions to our guests. So, and if you like the show and you think it'll help other people, because that's really the object of what we do, is we try to help people. So for the people who are watching for the first time, we're called Americans for Legal Reform, but unfortunately we haven't had a huge amount of success in actually reforming the system. Where we have had huge success, or I should say success, I guess huge is a relative term, is individual cases and helping people to try to not make the mistakes that a lot of us have made. So, you try to learn from somebody else's mistakes, not yours. But we have had success for people who are in bad situations in court, because our organization really does have a good reputation for following up and standing behind people we believe in. And that's why when we get behind people and send people to court watch and try to give them guidance, we try to only do it for the people who are doing the right thing as best we can screen. Of course, there are times where we get tricked. A lot of times you have narcissists, right? And a lot of us are probably married to them, and it's hard. They're very good at tricking you. So, but we really try to ask the right questions. People come into the office and they meet with Carl, and they'll tell them something that happened. If it doesn't sound, totally legit, Carl will say, well, do me a favor, come back in 2 weeks and bring me the transcripts. Well, that weeds out a lot of people because they didn't tell the truth. They try to win you over. And the transcripts are important because a lot of times in people's heads sometimes, and I've been there too, right? When we're in court, our cortisone is through the roof. We're totally stressed out. Our adrenaline's going, and you do not hear things the same way, right? And then, you say, oh, the judge said this, the other lawyer said this. And then you get the transcripts, and it's really not what happened. We just see things differently when we're under such amazing stress. You might hear what you want to hear, or somebody told you, what it is. So transcripts are really important for us at Americans for Legal Reform, but for everybody. I know I bought every transcript in my case and reviewed them, over and over again to try to find something in there that would help me out in my case. But also, I remember, you think at the time you're going to remember what happened in court. And you're definitely not going to, because if you're in court here on Long Island, you may be in court for 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 13, many people, 5 to 10 years. You're definitely not going to remember what happened 8 years ago at one of your, 8 court dates that you have every year. Which also, reminds me of when you're in front of a judge sometimes, and you'll piss off the judge, or you'll have a bad day in court, and you want to make a big deal about it. And sometimes they tell people, listen, don't make a big deal about it, because honestly, these judges could care less about you. And remember, you can't remember what happened. Imagine them seeing another 10 people that same day, and now you're going back, 2 months later. Now they've seen about 300 cases, and they all start to blend in, and they don't really remember. But if you start to make a big deal about something in court that you don't like, the judges keep notes. You all see them writing down on the thing. And you'll think that they remember you, because what these judges will do, and they're allowed to keep these private, by the way. They don't have to share, because I've subpoenaed them and asked for files. They do not have to give you their judicial notes. And they'll put notes in there. Everybody probably has their own system, but my guess is they have some system to know if they think who the designated winner, who the designated loser, this guy's honest, this woman's dishonest, and they keep notes. So you might think that they remember, because for you, it's the most important thing in the world. You're fighting for your kids. For them, you're just a number for the most part, right? You're just going through the system, and they really don't care about what's going on. So now that we've got this going, we got a few viewers on there. Yes, Carl.
I just want to add that we don't realize how effective we are. We don't realize how effective we are. Many things are changed, and they will never give credit back to us. They don't want to encourage us. They want to discourage us.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people come to us and say, man, when you guys showed up to court, it was a totally different game. You know, when I was there before, the judge was disrespectful, not listening. You know, when we show up, just having the presence there and having somebody watch them, it really does make a huge difference. Will it change the outcome all the time? I think many times it makes a huge difference, because all we're asking for is the judge to do the right thing. But that's not normally what happens in court. So that's what we're asking for. But sometimes you get a judge, I'm not going to mention any names today. I guess I'm not in the mood to get sued today, but you know, there are some judges who we know who really have psychological problems. You know, for example, Judge Leo, right? Judge Leo's got mental problems.
Got it?
So no matter what it's sort of reverse. He's going to be like, nobody here is going to get me to change my mind because ALR is here. And Carl knows that we've told people, for certain judges, when they come in, I have XYZ judge, and we'll say, us going there is not going to help you. This judge is just going to, you know, dig her heels in, or dig his heels in even more. So we're not, you know, some people get mad when we tell them, but we know we don't want to hurt somebody. We only want to help people. And if it's a judge who's just, you know, a normal judge not doing the right thing, and we show up, sometimes they listen better. So it's going to bring me to the next guest that I have. One of the most important things is, one of our topics, and I'm sure that's why a lot of people are tuning in, is attorneys. Do I hire an attorney, or do I go pro se? And it's easy for people who've been in court for 10, 15 years to say, oh, just go pro se. But you've already learned the whole system. And sometimes pro se is good, sometimes a combination is good, but a lot of times you need a lawyer. And I believe, especially at the beginning, it's important to get a good lawyer right out of the box. Because once you have a footprint on the case, it's very hard to turn around. You know, you have a ship going, you know, a huge ship going through the ocean. They don't stop and turn around very easily. So it's not that it can't be done, but if you start off with a lawyer who's not doing the right thing, and you're in court for 3 years, and you go, oh man, I just realized my lawyer's not doing the right thing, it's very, very hard to turn it around. If you're the designated loser, it's not easy. So get a good lawyer. And we had some confusion tonight. We weren't sure if our guest was going to be here. And one of the topics I was going to talk about is how do you know that you're getting a good lawyer? And you know, and Donna is one of the ones that of course, we believe in. That's why we asked her to speak. And we've had several other lawyers. You know, we see the bad guys, right? But there are good lawyers out there. Many of us know people come to our barbecues. They come to our meetings. You know, they give us free advice. There are good lawyers out there that are in it for the right thing. Just because somebody charges money, that doesn't mean they're a bad lawyer, right? This is what they do for a living. They're entitled to make a living. They can't, you know, I'm sure lawyers, many of them would like to help everybody for free, but they can't. They have bills to pay. So, and one of the things I tell you, get a lawyer, people come and go, I want a shark right out of the box. I want a shark. I want to destroy my wife. I want to destroy my husband. You don't need a shark. You want somebody who's ethical and is going to do the right thing. And just because they have a big fancy office at 666, which is ironic, Old Country Road, right, by the Ruth's Chris over there, the fancy offices, doesn't mean they're a good lawyer. My opinion, a lot of times it means they're a shit lawyer, because that means they get a lot of money from their clients, right? They have $25,000, $30,000 a month rent. They have 3 people in the office. They don't do their own paperwork. They have paralegals doing everything. They don't even really know your case. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're a good lawyer because they have a big fancy office or they drive a Lamborghini to the courthouse, right? So that brings me to our next guest. And you know, a lot of people like Jeff Deskovic, right? A lot of people here know Jeff, who was wrongfully in prison for rape and murder. He didn't commit, spent 17 years in prison. And when he got out, he went to law school and became an attorney. That's a good guy. He understands what we're all going through. You know, a lot of lawyers, they don't understand it. They're in the system. So Donna, I met years ago when she was doing, was it your thesis? What were you doing?
Yeah.
Right? Her thesis, and she was talking about the problems in the judicial system that she heard about through a relationship that she had. And she was going to law school, and we spoke, and you know, she asked my opinion. I gave her my opinion on it. She said, "Well, I'm going to law school." I said, "Man, that's great, because we need people who understand and are human, you know, really human beings that have feelings, care about other people, and truly understand." And I have to tell you, a lot of times we meet people who say, "I'm going to get in, and I'm going to change the system," and then they become a lawyer, and they become part of the system because they're there every day. There are a few of them who come, right? The people who come to our meetings all the time, the people who speak at our meetings for free, people who show up at our barbecues and walk around with, 600 people asking them for free advice. Those are people who really care. So I really appreciate Donna. I don't want to take up more of her time because she made a great presentation, but I did go to ChatGPT and ask it to help me write a nice short introduction. I love that thing. So tonight we're honored to hear from Donna Serio, a Long Island-based attorney who has dedicated her career to standing up for accountability, transparency, and meaningful legal reform. Donna Serio is not afraid to challenge the systems that fail the people they're meant to serve, and she brings both legal expertise and real-world advocacy to that fight. Her work reflects the belief that justice should be accessible, not just theoretical. We're grateful to have her voice with us tonight. Everybody please welcome Donna Serio. Yep, we'll just move it over there.
Good evening, everyone. I am Donna Serio. I have a personal injury law practice, my office in West Saybrook. I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Americans for Legal Reform. Tonight we're going to speak about restoring trust in the legal profession. And I want to start by saying you probably don't expect to hear from a lawyer. I can understand why some of you don't trust lawyers. If your experience with the legal system has involved loss, injury, delays, unanswered phone calls, or feeling like just another number, then that hesitation isn't irrational, it's earned in those circumstances. And I'm going to stress throughout the entire time, in that certain circumstance, because a part, of course, as we all know, doesn't make a whole. Here's the problem. This is the problem. The law is a tool. Like any tool, it can be used to build or damage, to protect or to exploit. And because most people meet lawyers at the most stressful moments of their lives, and I will say the details often are hard to get through with some people when you meet them at the most stressful points of their lives, but trust is already fragile when the relationship begins. That means our relationship goes beyond law. People have every right to be cautious. I didn't become a lawyer because of some long-term plan. I became a lawyer because I was also going through a long, arduous divorce, and I didn't feel fully represented by my own attorney. He wasn't unethical, he was capable, but he was rushed, and he handled a heavy caseload. And too often, he seemed to miss, or not fully remember, details that mattered deeply to me and my family, and I'm sure that's something that we can all have sadly may have had that happen. And when you're dealing with your children and your finances and your future, details aren't small, they're everything. At that time, I was a hairdresser. And my work depended on listening closely, remembering details about my clients, even as a hairdresser, and understanding that when someone puts their trust in you, you're dealing with something personal, not abstract. But as a client, as a legal law client going through a tumultuous time, I didn't understand the legal documents being handed to me. Couldn't read them. Didn't understand the language, the strategy, or how decisions were being made on my behalf. And eventually I had to be honest with myself. And I couldn't fully trust my attorney to be focused, prepared, and fluent in the details in my own case, that I wasn't competently being represented. That's not a personal criticism or good intention. It requires attention, preparation, and a full command of the facts. That realization, for me, changed everything. I decided to study the law myself. That decision led me to college at just about 40. And just to be clear, I don't recommend going through college while you're going through a 6-year litigation divorce at that age with a 7-year-old and working, and I can go on and on. I don't recommend doing it. There's easier ways to become a lawyer. But living through that pressure connected me in a very real way to a client's field. When events strike that no one ever planned, never wanted, and suddenly everything feels overwhelming. Before I ever became an attorney, I was still in college. I ultimately discharged my attorney and finished the litigation myself. That experience didn't make me anti-lawyer. It didn't make me not trust all lawyers. It made me deeply aware of what it feels like to have this responsibility and what it feels like to have someone depend on you to speak for them and to question whether they truly are. And that's why I became a lawyer. As a personal injury attorney, I don't represent cases, I represent people. People who are injured, people who are scared, people who are overwhelmed by insurance companies that see them as numbers instead of human beings. When someone is hurt because of negligence, the issue isn't politics, it's a responsibility. The civil justice system exists so that individuals can be heard, supported, and treated fairly when life doesn't go according to plan in all aspects of the law. When lawyers, and they don't, it becomes harder for everyone, especially people who did nothing wrong. Let me give you an example. In 2012, the United States Attorney's Office in Manhattan charged 36 individuals in what was described as the largest no-fault automobile insurance fraud case ever prosecuted. The case involved fraudulent medical clinics, corrupt doctors, and attorneys. Hundreds of millions of dollars were siphoned out of the system through unnecessary treatment, kickbacks, and fabricated claims. And here's the part that gets often overlooked when you hear a giant story like that. When things like this happen, it doesn't stop with the people involved. After scandals like this, insurance companies don't distrust those lawyers. They distrust all lawyers. And again, in all aspects of the law, when we come across a bad example or a bad situation, one would tend to distrust all lawyers as a result, or even all judges. And I would venture to say, it needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis and as a whole, not just a part. Claims then, in this case, scrutinized more aggressively, payments are delayed, honest clients are treated with suspicion. The injured person who did nothing wrong has to fight harder, wait longer, and prove more, simply because others abused the system before them. And that's the real cost of unethical practice of law. Ethics aren't about protecting an insurance company, they're about protecting people and preserving a system when someone genuinely needs help. When lawyers exaggerate claims, cut corners, or stop paying attention to details, they don't just hurt their own clients, they make justice harder for the next person who comes along. Ethical lawyering isn't about perfection. It's about accountability, a sense of responsibility to the clients and the system. Yes, there are lawyers who chase volume over value, who disappear after retainers clear, who forget why the profession exists. But the majority of attorneys practice with respect for the rule of law and genuine commitment to the people that they represent. They prepare, they show up, they care, and yes, they do still exist. They may not make headlines, but they are the reason the system is an honor to be trusted with their lives at moments when they feel vulnerable, overwhelmed, or unsure of what comes next. Each and every client puts their faith into me, and I don't take that lightly. I stay with them every step of the way, explaining the process, answering questions, and answering questions, and making sure they're never left in the dark. Because competent representation isn't about legal skill. It's about presence. It's about consistency. And it's about remembering that behind every case is a person who trusted you to speak for them when they couldn't speak for themselves across all aspects of the law, not only personal injury. When lawyers practice this way, trust grows, not because it's demanded, but because it's earned across the entire legal profession. And I'm not here to ask you to blindly trust lawyers. I'm here to say something easier. Not all attorneys should be met with automatic skepticism. Not all judges should be met with automatic skepticism. And I will say that there is quite a few new judges who are in the system that are really caring people and really are trying to themselves make reform, which is why they wanted to be in the position that they're in. But most lawyers are lawyers worth recognizing, even though there isn't a headline. And those are the lawyers worth trusting. And thank you for your time.
I got a whole bunch of questions.
Can I get the mic? Let me take the other one. I'll use this one.
All right. Of all names that come across my mind.
Fantastic. Okay, I just have a question first. Being as a personal injury lawyer, which is negligence, right? Somebody, because of their negligence, inflicts pain on somebody else, right? Is there any way we could tie that into, say, a parent who alienates the child against the other parent?
Sadly, the parent isn't walking around with insurance on their own negligence. And two, as I know in family law, it's the hardest thing is proving alienation, and it is rampant. You're right. No, there isn't, because the parent has a duty to the child, but not necessarily negligence involves a duty. For me to be guilty of negligence to you, I have to have a duty to you. As I sit here right now, other than not punching you in the face, I don't have a duty to you.
Right.
The parent, as they're getting divorced, doesn't necessarily have a duty to the father, not such that, to my knowledge, that it's codified in a law.
But what if in the agreement, they always have this BS thing that nobody listened to that says they won't do anything to estrange the relationship with the other?
Yes.
It's just something that, as you were speaking, I was thinking maybe, because we're always looking for aspects, can we get these cases, we try to get them out of family court because it's just a circus over there. And, you know, in other states, people get them into federal court sometimes for violating, you know, the constitutional rights. And then, you know, in Brooklyn, Long Island, you just can't really do it. They don't want to hear the cases. They say you have to exhaust everything first. And the Supreme, so I just think if somebody they do have a duty, right, once they have a court order.
Once they have a court order, yeah.
And then
they're
if you
commanded
could
to
prove
do something.
alienation, if there would be a way for a personal injury, if anybody's ever tried it, it was just
Yeah.
something that I thought of as you were speaking.
Yeah, the difficulty too in proving alienation is it's subjective. It goes to thought, because that becomes and I agree with you that it's rampant. I
But no,
agree with you that
I
it's
know
real.
you understand it.
I very well understand it, but it's subjective. It becomes he said, she said. Where negligence is, you know, if I trip you as you go by, I did that.
Right.
Here it's like, she said this, well, I didn't mean that. He said that, I didn't mean that. And it's very hard to decipher. And is the kid alien? Well, the kid's 5, they're 6. Well, they don't know. It's such a gray, although it's so clear to each parent, and it's so painful, I get that, to each parent. To prove it circumspectly, it becomes gray. And it shouldn't, you're right, but it does.
So based on your experience, what made you not go into the family law part, and why did you pick the negligence part? I'm giving you easy questions to start
You're giving
before I
me
give
easy
you the gym.
questions. My divorce was 6 years of litigation. And then I also helped a friend of mine with their litigation, and I just didn't want to relive that. I just didn't want to. And really, like even to your alienation point, it does feel as though you're banging your head against the wall with that. Because I was a big proponent, as you know, when I wrote that paper, I'm a big believer in men getting slighted in the family court system. I do see that a lot. You know, in other countries, women don't get alimony or maintenance unless they're disabled. I am a big believer in the fact that if 2 people got divorced and 2 people had a child, then 2 people should equally share in the care and raising of the child. I don't believe that, and I've seen this happen to many men typically, I mean, I'm sure it happens to women, but generally, from my experience, I've seen it happen to many men where they are literally washed out by the fact that they got divorced, and washed out forever. And that shouldn't be. It really shouldn't. They try to be nice and whatever, and they, you know, a quarter of their salary, whatever, and they have to pay for an apartment. Granted, you got divorced, okay, but the cost should equally be shared. And I really think that needs to be reformed. I strongly feel that needs to be reformed. And it just
When you run for
perpetuates.
judge.
It does perpetuate. And I've seen it, and also too, I mean, back to what I wrote that about too, it was a very real thing where men, I don't have to tell you, men's arrears were constantly increased.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere when they were absolutely paying the entire time. I've seen it firsthand, besides the examples you've told me. And, you know, there is certain amounts of grant money that were given for that I'm not going to get into right now, but those men were wrongly taken advantage of, and the legal fees for those, that's astronomical. Most people couldn't even afford to pay the legal fees, which we can't work for free either, you know, but to pay the legal fees to fight something where your arrears were $30,000 and now they're $60,000, but you've been paying. You know, there's no words for that. There just isn't words for
We
it.
have people in the audience here today that are almost $1 million.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they were paying to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, religiously.
Yeah, somebody's
Yeah.
supposed to pay $13,000 a month and they put him in jail.
Right. So it's that kind of thing that just, you know, when does it end? And then, you know, women will go and say, well, why doesn't a man want to get married? Well, we don't know, do we? We don't know. So, yeah, that's why I went to personal injury. And I do feel, too, dealing with injured people, and they're so confused, and they're so lost after that. And insurance companies will take advantage of you the same way this aspect will take advantage, and I'm not going to go and, you know, say it that much like you did. But, and I've seen that a lot. So, I don't know, it just resonated with me more so.
Donna, my name is Jim Kelly, and I want to thank you very much for being here. I know you've
Good
taken the
question.
position that not all attorneys are bad and not all judges are bad,
Yes, very true.
and that you're opposed to the blanket statements. I'm going to ask a couple of questions that's going to challenge that just a bit. First, let me ask you this. Do you believe that there's due process in the courts?
In which court?
In any court.
In most courts, in court, yes, I do believe that there's due process. However, I also think that you are more likely to get the full extent of due process with the correct advocate. I think that if you do not have the correct advocate, you'll argue that there wasn't due process, simply because, like I did, like I spoke initially, you don't understand what's happening. Not to say that someone doesn't understand, but if you don't fully grasp what's happening, you'll feel that you're not having due process, and that's why it's best to have a strong advocate that you can trust.
Okay, now I'm going to take an opposite position.
Mhm.
I'm going to start off in the family law side, and I'm going to start off with the marriage license. You have the right to marry. It's a fundamental right. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to contract. New York State deprives you of those rights under color of law without due process. Now, they can do that if there's a substantial state interest involved.
Mhm.
And most people don't know what the substantial state interest that introduced the marriage license in the first place was. I do. It was to maintain racial purity in the state of New York. That ended on June 12th, 1967, with Loving v. Virginia. Therefore, every New York State Supreme Court judge that can issue a divorce is an accessory after the fact to the deprivation of those rights under the color of law without due process, serving no greater public good, and a party to the constructive fraud after the fact of selling you rights you already possess. That deprives due process under the doctrine of Ex parte Young, does it not?
These are quite large statements, which I'm not going to speak to. But I do appreciate your knowledge in that aspect.
Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah.
She's still a lawyer, you know.
Yes,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
still
But
needs
are you,
to.
I'm
But
going
she'd
to ask
like
you,
to
are
keep
you,
her
Mr.
bar.
Kelly, are you an attorney?
Only for myself, pursuant to New York State Judicial Law, Section 478, Sentence 1.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I'm not going to debate that with you, I'm not going to. But it
Most-
was a very well said.
Most
Very well
people-
said, I'll give you that.
Most people won't. In fact, the second department wouldn't,
Yeah.
because I
no.
did put it in front of them.
I can't speak to that either.
Yes, well. So the second part, you mentioned, briefly, you touched on federal incentive grant money. You didn't mention the grant, you didn't go into details, you kind of brushed past it. I'm going to hit directly on it. Federal incentive grant, CFDA 93563 for the collection of child support. All right, that introduces an existential bias that creates a partial tribunal, contrary to the first element of Judge Friendly's some kind of hearing that says an impartial tribunal is necessary for substantive due process. So, instead of a judge necessarily starting from the position of equal shared parenting for both parents and no child support, in New York State they start from the position of custodial parent, non-custodial parent, and child support order, which infringes on due process, does it not?
It does, but there's two different aspects to the law. When you say due process, you're speaking constitutionally, but when you go to family court and child support, there's the Family Court Act, which, yes, I agree with you, those don't coincide. But there are two bodies of law that you're speaking of.
Correct.
So if you were to challenge a due process, you would take your family court claim and take that into federal court, and certainly you seem learned enough to do so.
Thank
But
you.
there are two laws. So first, it comes in on a state level in your Family Court Act. That goes first. Then you would have to go into your federal court challenge on your due process. Have you tried that?
I have.
How did you do?
It got dismissed in federal court, and on that particular claim, I did not choose to go to the Second Circuit. I have gone to the Second Circuit on others.
I'm not going to speak about that, though.
I can
do
understand
appreciate it.
that.
I'm not going to speak about it.
Let's go to
That
the...
really wasn't even like trying to see how this coincides with what I've spoken about
Well,
today.
blanket statements. And is the system any good at all? Can you get due process?
Of course it
And
is.
I'm thinking to myself, you know, there are good people. Yes, there are good people in a system that is so corrupt that it makes it impossible to get due process.
I would venture to say you're wrong on that.
Okay, let's go to the third point, and it's probably my last point.
That's great.
Yeah, I know.
I'm so thrilled that it is. Because you're just full of blanket statements. But go ahead, continue.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that one of the things that that the courts need to be able to support is that you have a procedural due process right to be heard on correcting the official court transcript based on independently preserved evidence. And of course, there's the prohibition that they staunchly support against any electronic recording in the courts. And that deprives you of
When you say they, who are you speaking of?
the Office of Court Administration.
Okay.
Because even if a judge wanted to allow it, the Office of Court Administration, I'm sure, would say, no, don't set that example. I mean, I've heard of one judge that allowed one film crew in one time. That's it. Other than that, I've never heard of an exception. So my position is that a recording device is protected under the Second Amendment because it preserves the right. It's something held in the hand for defense, and it defends against the erroneous deprivation of rights based on an erroneous transcript. And to be deprived of that is to be deprived of due process.
Well, if you feel that you've been deprived of due process by an erroneous transcript, I would say that you should take that up with the appropriate court that had that happen to you. And have you?
I have.
How did you do with that?
Well, last time it was Kelly versus Graff. Of course, there's the 11th Amendment and judicial immunity, and they threw it out there. Now, I've been through the Second Circuit Court of Appeals on another case, and I could certainly bring it up there. But the particular case that I was thrown out on was a direct citation against Ortiz v. Perez, which said a judge cannot, without notice, dismiss something without.
How were you involved in that case?
I was the plaintiff.
Ah.
And I filed, and the case was dismissed without notice, without hearing, without leave to amend. And
Did they say what? Perhaps that the form wasn't proper?
they said it was the caption. And of course, I
That's
could
what
have
just
changed
said.
the caption.
How did I know that? I have a crystal ball.
If I had amended the caption,
Who's better than me now?
if I could have
Yeah.
amended the caption,
Right.
then that would have been fine.
Here's my point, though, and I appreciate the point you're bringing up. But here's my point, and this is actually what I spoke about today. It is important to have a strong advocate where you don't get miscaptions and then say, well, this court is awful and didn't let me speak. There is a form, there is a system, and there is a legal system with a million laws that lawyers that I have to learn, we all had to learn, many, years it takes, bar exam, you want to kill yourself. You have to learn all these little steps. You can't do this until you do this. And for the layperson who goes, well, this is bullshit, I want to just speak. Yeah, I know. But there's a reason that lawyers do get paid what they get paid, and there is a reason that all those little steps have to get followed. It's just streamlines, it's a system, everything is a system. I drive, it's a system. I got to put my blinker on, I can't do 90 on Sunrise Highway, it's a system. All of those pieces that make a whole. Not one part where you say, well, they wouldn't let me speak, I don't like it. It's not always true. But I do appreciate your thoughts.
Okay, thank
Any
you.
other questions?
I think, one of the things that, the difference between where you're practicing now and the family court is the jury. I think that makes the biggest difference that, even if you have a bad judge, or you think you have a bad, but at least at the end of the day, you have a jury, and you have, I think, a fair shot, because
Good point.
juries try to do the right thing, where in family court, it's one person, and you could argue, which I do, that, losing custody, it may be more important in some of these cases for 100,000, because most of us would give up 200, 300, 400 million, whatever,
Yeah.
to have our kids. And yet we have one judge, sometimes not even a judge, a magistrate,
Yep.
making these life decisions where I think if there was a jury, first of all, these cases wouldn't go to trial, because you would say, man, there's a jury. What if there's a guy who got screwed in court and he's not going to let me get screwed?
Well, that's what the voir dire is for, yeah.
So, exactly. So,
And there are many states that have juries.
yeah, I
so
think
I forget
Texas,
which ones, but
Texas
there are
definitely
states.
does.
I agree
But
with
I
you.
think that
Good
would
point.
solve a lot of, they say it would overwhelm, but I don't think it would. I think people would not go to court, just like what you do. A lot of people don't go to trial, right? They want to settle because, you know what? I might get a jury who may award $10 million, so
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
pick the amount that I think is probably a fair amount, and
Right.
both parties agree.
Right.
And wouldn't the same thing happen in family court? You say, you know what?
Good point.
I don't want to go in front of a jury. The mom might say, you know what? 80% of dads win, but you know what? I don't want to be that 20%. So
It's a
I don't
good
want to
point.
take a chance.
It
And
would
I-
take down the animosity
I think it
too.
would.
I agree with you.
You know,
It would-
that, you know, like I said, every judge, no matter what, you have to have your bias. How could you not? If you're a woman, maybe you favor the mother. I think so few judges really, in the back, it's hard not to be biased. You know, if the guy comes in, he reminds you of your ex-husband who was a jackass, you know.
I think most women are smarter than that, though. They can see beyond that. They can give it a little,
See, I think
too little credit.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the family court here, there's such a bias towards fathers going in.
Yeah.
That it's just the way it is.
It's true.
You know, and lawyers will tell you, when we go to lawyers, they'll say, listen, you're a guy. You're probably going to lose.
I would say it's not bias, though, necessarily, Gary. I'd say it's the way the law is set up.
Well, like to Jim's point, it's not set up that there should be a presumption of shared parenting,
Right.
which is what we argue
Right.
for
I
at
think it's an
Americans for
error-
Legal
right.
Reform.
I think it's
Absolutely.
an error in the shape and the form of the
Yeah.
law.
And then the benefit to the, Title
Generally,
4D and all
who's the more
that.
moneyed spouse? I mean,
Yeah.
the man would go to work typically, the woman would stay home with the kids.
Right.
So the woman, don't forget, has lost her career while she's home with the kids. Somebody's got to do it.
Right.
You know, so who's the more moneyed spouse? It just
It
follows.
just kept going.
Yeah, and I
We
think
want
this-
equal rights, except,
Right, so there's a
except for when
break.
it's in court, right?
Right, so there's a
We
break
don't
in the
want it.
system along the
So
way.
that's why I think the
More
system
so
is-
than bias.
Is broken there, which is, if any system should be fixed, it should be the
That's
family
exactly
court.
right, right.
You know, what's more important than the kids, and, we always say we want both parents in the, I mean, listen, we help women too, and it's horrible when a woman
Yeah.
doesn't, I mean, in some aspects, it's worse because society says, man, this woman must be really bad
Right.
to lose custody, like, what did she do?
Right.
It's gotta be
No,
bad.
there's definitely a defect
So
in
we
the
have some
system.
questions, we have a question all the way in the, Mike, come on, give me a workout, all the way up the hill, you could have come down to see me.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for coming.
Sure.
I had a few questions. One, what % of accident cases do go in front of a jury?
Actually, you'd be surprised, not that many. It depends on, for one, the liability issue. So if liability is in question, all right, you're gonna hash that out a bit. It depends on the level of damages too. Very often, it's able to settle, and I'll take a minute to speak on the $25,000 policy limits to that regard. Very often, there's a person driving around driving is a privilege, right? We all know that, it's not a right. Very often, there's a person driving around recklessly with a $25,000 policy who hits a pedestrian, sends them, for example, 30 feet in the air, and he has a 22-year-old that now has horrific brain damage, seizures, can't work anymore. Guess what? They have a $25,000 policy, and that's all that they have. And that's all that you can get that person. Of course, you'd love to sue them, but you can't sue that person because they don't own anything. So in that regard, just a note on, there should be no $25,000 policy limits. They should be, if you can't afford to be on the road and drive recklessly, you shouldn't be.
So that was my next question. This $25,000 insurance policies, if you crashed into me and you had a $25,000 policy, but you own a house, you had a 401k, you had money in the bank, can any of that be touched, or is it just through insurance and that's it?
It's just through insurance and that's it. Generally, you wouldn't. Generally, you don't. Because it's negligence insofar as the car, and the car has insurance, and that's where it's at. But generally, though I'll tell you this, most people that are driving around with a $25,000 policy don't have a 401k and a house and all of that. Unless, I'll venture too, unless, like, let's say you killed the person. Then, it rises to a greater level. But for, a standard injury, no.
Yeah, so how does that work? Say I have no insurance at all on my car, and I'm either an illegal alien or I'm a citizen or whatever it is, and I'm driving a car with no insurance.
And you hit me,
Yeah.
like Carl thought happened earlier. I'm not gonna. So your insurance policy would cover you. You have supplemental uninsured motorist coverage, and then your insurance would cover, or uninsured in that case would be considered uninsured motorist coverage. So then whatever the limits of your policy would be would cover you. If you had no insurance, you could file an MVAC claim through the state of New York, which also becomes $25,000.
Then they have what they call umbrella insurance,
Right.
right? Is that worth having?
I think it's worth having because it protects you to, again, it's to the limits of your policy to a certain extent. You're never really gonna, I'm not gonna say never, but typically, unless you're drunk and you're like, it's a catastrophic thing that you've done, that's where your umbrella policy protects you.
So if, say me and you get into a fist fight out in the park, and I cause damage to you, can you sue me?
Yes, that's different. That's you, yes.
So then that's when my umbrella policy would come into effect.
So too, if you've allocated that it's intentional or it's neglect, because your insurance policy will cover you for intentional, your insurance policy, your home insurance policy will cover you on neglect, not an intentional act.
So how many punch somebody accidentally?
Trip and
There's
fall.
only so much legal advice I'm going to give out at this time, but I do appreciate your questions.
This is my last question.
All right?
You were in family court,
Yes.
so when you were there, I'm assuming you saw the corruption that went on?
Did I see the corruption? No. I did myself witness an issue with a person that I used to be friendly with, where they had a long, arduous fight that was somewhat unnecessary. Can I say for sure that was corruption? No, I cannot. Can I say that the appellate division did make right on that? Yes, they did.
So, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but there's a lot of corruption that goes on in family court. So my question to you is one, do you have the option, if you don't want a jury trial, and just have the judge?
I actually can't speak to family court now, but I don't believe the family court ever offered a jury trial.
No, I'm talking about with injury, with insurance.
Oh, you can, the person, you don't have to have a jury, no, you can have a bench trial if you chose, yeah.
So, do you see corruption in the line of work that you do in the courts?
No, I don't actually, which is one of the reasons why I put this presentation together, because I know how your group feels. I know you guys have really always been through a hard time, but I really did find it important to come here and say, those are certain cases, and I do venture to say, choosing a strong advocate and knowing how to dot your I's and cross your T's does get you through. In that case that I said to you a while ago with the friend that I had, where it went arrears went from like 40,000 to whatever, it went ridiculous. The appellate division, once brought to their attention in the correct manner, did of course see that and did of course reverse it. So is that corruption? No. It's the fact that if the person isn't actually speaking for you and it's not being brought to their attention in the correct way, in the correct procedure, that's not corruption. That's error that the layperson may see as corruption. That was actually the point of what I was trying to get across today.
Because, I mean, I don't know if you just think we're like a woman-hating club.
Not at all.
So,
You have reason. I understand that.
so,
Not at all.
So I won custody of my sons, thanks to Gary and Carlos guiding me through it. But I won custody, and I'm a retired police officer, and what I saw going on, so I'm not disgruntled. I did very good. I kept my houses, I kept my 401k, I kept my 457, I kept my kids. What went on to me is disgusting. It was, clear as day corruption. What they did to my ex-wife was disgusting. It was just a big cash money grab, and it's just disgusting on what goes on. So I didn't know if you were aware of what goes on. And I won. I should be excited and happy and jumping joy, which I am. But at the same time, as much as I can't stand my ex-wife, I have sympathy for her. They stole her money.
Yeah.
They stole her family. You made it a big war, and now she can't show her face.
I'm sorry we went through that. That's terrible.
But, all right, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I also think part of the reason where you're in now is less, I don't know if the word's corruption, but more ethical, because the way the fee structure is done. If you're a personal injury lawyer and you're on contingency and you don't do a good job, you're just never going to make any money. So there is an incentive to do a better job, where in family court, there's a disincentive, because if you're really good, you can settle this case right away and say, hey, listen, let me talk to the ex's lawyer, we'll work it out.
Yeah.
You get your $2,500, $5,000 retainer, and it's over.
Yeah.
But if you can say, you know what, let's fight, you're entitled to this, we're going to fight for custody, that's how the bills go up and up and up. And of course, it takes two to do it, and it's sort of a reverse incentive to do well. Maybe if there was a cap on legal fees,
Exactly. Also, to that point, to have a cap on legal fees, there would have to be a cap on the time and the amount of for lack of a better word, fighting, right? Like you spoke before about proving alienation. Proving alienation in a court could take forever. So don't forget, the attorney is still working. Again, these things are not corruption. These are, they're answering the phone, they're listening. Oh, what did he say to you? Oh, what did they say to you? What did they say? What did this one say? What did that one say? Okay, what does your kid say? Da, 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 da. Let's write this down. Send me the text message. Send me the emails. This is a lot of time going on. And then you'd have to establish that over a pattern of time in order to prove alienation. It wouldn't be, for example, 2 or 3 sentences. It would have to be, anything gets established over a repeated pattern of time. So you do this over 6 months, yes, it would be expensive, and you're right, it becomes astronomical. But back to the break in the system, or how maybe law needs to be reformed in that way. The attorney can't be expected to, now he has to do that, or she, times 6 other couples. So all day you're on the phone going, yeah. Something has to give there, and it's just.
So when I was in my situation in the very beginning, I went and met with my wife's lawyer outside the courtroom.
Right.
And I said, she can have all my properties. She can have my 401k. She can have my 457. I'll give her $3,000 a month child support. I get the kids. My wife's lawyer tells me, I can't let you do that. You'll never be able to survive. And he got mad at me. He started poking me in my chest, telling me I'm making $100,000 on this case, and I'm going to be made a partner.
I can't speak to you, I'm sorry, though. I can't speak to that certain circumstance.
But I just wanted to see the reaction because I knew because of everyone
Right.
giving me the heads up.
Yeah.
I threw it out there, and then he went and told my wife. He's telling me that I can't give that as an option because I can't survive. And then they come up to me laughing at me, calling it an insult.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, not every circumstance is, of course, good. Yeah, I can't speak to an individual circumstance, though.
Okay, any questions? She told me to turn your mic off.
Yeah, I've got one from online.
You can give him the mic.
He's reading it online, Len.
Good.
You're a lawyer. I know you can handle anything.
Yeah, I can handle it.
He's going to read a question from online.
I'm not so sure this is your field, but let's see if I can do this. From Becky, what is the process of filing a parental alienation petition, and what should we expect after the petition is filed?
You sure you don't want to switch to family law?
Yeah, no, again,
Got a lot of
let me be
business
clear,
here today.
I'm not a family law attorney. I was just speaking, this presentation was about trust in the legal profession and ethical lawyering, and of that nature. I'm not a family law attorney, and I don't pretend to be.
Could you give advice to everybody on how to find an ethical lawyer? Because
Do you know how to raise goats?
so no,
You
but,
don't know about that?
I wouldn't know how to find somebody who knows how to raise goats. So somebody who's hiring a lawyer, what advice would you give when you're interviewing? And how do people? You go to ChatGPT.
Well, it's the
yes.
same thing like when you meet somebody, right? What happens when you meet somebody? You know in 3 seconds if you want to be bothered with that person or not, generally.
But
Don't you?
lawyers are good salespeople.
Well, I can't help you with that. Then good luck buying a used car as
what
well.
questions-
I don't know.
Any questions that you would recommend asking? Or?
I mean, I generally think that when you meet somebody and they're down to earth, that they have a good reviews, maybe we like to look at that now too. But I think when a person looks you in the eye and shakes your hand, I'm old fashioned that way. That's how I would initially judge somebody. You do have to take a leap of faith, certainly, very often. Hi.
Hey, Donna.
Hey.
Excuse me. Just like you, I'm a solo practitioner. I practice. I do a very similar. I pursue a very similar avenue like you. I do real estate transactions, so opposite side of the spectrum. However, I try to be an advocate for my clients, hand-holding throughout the whole process, answer every question I can, devote as much time as I can to the time where I find myself sacrificing time with my family to help out clients. But the one thing that I always struggle with is how do you, the thing I struggle with is where you provide this service, but you also don't want to charge so much to a client where you feel it's counterintuitive to the aspect. So basically, what I always try to, I still, in 7 years of practice, I still tussle with where I don't want to charge a client a certain amount of money, but I also want to be there as much as I possibly can. But there is this kind of balancing. So what
Right.
advice do you maybe have, or where you could say, all right, this is a reasonable charge, but also you value your time, the energy that you put into each client, or if I'm making sense.
Yeah, you are. It's a good question. And I do have, outside of personal injury, I do take on some other fights here and there where it warrants a retainer and it warrants a fee. And I do tell them, straight up, to the best that I can, you're opening a can of worms. And it's going to go this way, and this is what's going to, it's going to, not that I can say what's going to happen to begin with. I'll take an initial retainer and I'll say, well, but I'm telling you now, like I have one it's a can of worms. I might be prepared because you're going to have to at some point say, I'm either going to withdraw, and I've told them too, I do not want to sit here and take your money, but I have to, because you're going to get to a point, and it's not family law related, you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to either withdraw, or you're going to have to just run for it, and I keep urging, in this case, I keep urging them to not, but we're running. I mean, I've already won a certain aspect of that, which makes them feel comfortable, or they are comfortable with it, but it's going to get bigger. So it's kind of like saying, if I'm renovating a home, I'm going to do my kitchen, but then I'm going to do the hallway, but then I'm going to do the bathroom, like when does it stop? Basically, I think it's always good to be upfront with the client and say, this is going to cause this. But if we start getting into the hallway, and then we start breaking down this wall, and then, well, wait, what if we put a header here? Then, you know what I mean? If you look at it like that, because you're going piece by piece. That's how I look at it.
How you doing? My name's Jim.
Hey, Jim.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
But I did hear you mention something about family court and there's no corruption. I would just like to ask you, I'm just curious, when was the last time that you sat at a family court hearing?
So thank you for your question. And again, I did not say there's no corruption. I said, to my knowledge, I did not see it beside the instance that I was aware of and the few examples that Gary had shown me. And I will say this, I am not a family court attorney. What I'm speaking of was back in, I want to say, 2016. So no, I'm not here for the purpose of speaking on family court corruption, or corruption in courts generally. I was here based on the presentation that I spoke on, but I do appreciate your question.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if you could just follow up with that. When was the last time that you sat at a family court?
I hope I never sit in a family court
Thank you.
again.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I just want to mention, as a avid court watcher for the last 6 years, I've been watching family court, and it's plagued. And the only reason why I'm saying something is because the audience may have heard and thought that there's no corruption. I'm here to tell you.
I know, but maybe you should save that, though, for another meeting, because
Right.
I am not here, nor will I, speak on corruption in courts or family court corruption. That's not why I'm here.
Right, but I just feel.
But
it's
I do
my
appreciate your thoughts.
I do. I just feel it's my responsibility because it was mentioned, and I would like to just take the opportunity.
It was not mentioned by me.
Well, it was mentioned by the audience. or
Perhaps you
someone.
should speak
And
with them.
I would just like to say, because there's going to be people that are going to hear this,
Okay.
that there is extreme corruption, when you have judges that file false charges, like Judge Legurcio
That was
filed
I'm
the
not
supervising judge.
Not going to. Not going to do it. That's not why I came here. Not
Okay,
going
that's
to
all right.
do it.
Hey, listen,
And when I
I'm
said
just
that I'm
making a
not going
statement.
to do it, that means that what I actually said was that I'm not going to do it. Those are
Okay,
my
well,
actual
listen,
words.
no problem.
Though I do
There you
appreciate
go. I just wanted to say,
your
make a
opinion.
statement.
Do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. You have a question?
Where do you practice? Just Suffolk or you throughout?
No, I actually have clients even as far as way upstate Albany. New York State
New
predominantly.
York
yes.
State?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So if anybody wants to take Donna's card, we'll also post it on the, Jim, you'll post it on the Facebook page?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so we'll
already
post
up.
on the Facebook page, but if anybody has any personal injury issues, Donna's cards are up here. You can do it. As I said, I know Donna personally, so I know she's a woman with integrity. And, as we know, just coming here, speaking, knowing that a lot of us have issues, right, with family court, with the court system in general. And as I say, anytime we have, we've had judges come speak, we've had lawyers come speak, and there's not that many of them, right? So I think we have to, give credit to people who come here and are willing to get up and speak and answer our questions, without asking for a fee or asking for anything in return. So I'm going to give a round of applause for Donna for coming out. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Very much. I think we have a little bit of time, so I think, Mike, did you want to speak tonight? I don't know, Jim volunteered you. He said you had some words to speak, Mike. You took notes?
No, I just want to make sure I get.
This is Mike Houlihan. He's one of our members of ALR for a few years.
Thank you very much. My name is Mike Houlihan. I spent at least 11 years in between Supreme Court and Family Court. I would sit there for over 8 hours at a time and watch cases, and it was disgusting all along. So in my journey of family court, I came across a judge, Judge Laguercio, Karen Laguercio. Everyone knows from Jim Fiegel being falsely arrested by her. If the district attorney's office voluntarily drops criminal charges on you, then they're 100% in the wrong. And Jim showed the video footage with Sean Paul Reyes, and it was a good thing. But my wife was abusing my sons verbally, mentally, physically, was admitted it in front of a forensic psychologist. It was in the forensic report, and no one wanted to read the report. They all talked about the report, but they would not read the report, never made it into evidence, allegedly. But my sons and I explained to CPS, explained to the judge what was going on, and Karen Laguercio basically lied. Disgustingly, I've never seen anything in my life. I was supposed to have a trial that lasted 4 days. It lasted 15 minutes. So I was representing myself the majority of the time, and I always had a paper trail. And by the end of the paper trail, one day I had my trial, I had a box that was 25 pounds of emails and recordings and all. And Judge Laguercio got upset with me because I embarrassed her. I embarrassed the county, I embarrassed CPS, I embarrassed my kid's lawyer, who was calling up my sons intoxicated. We had recordings of it, and she would not listen to it. She didn't care. She laughed that her best friend, Margaret Schaffler, was calling my sons drunk. She got a kick out of it. And I've come across many mothers and fathers that have not seen their kids in years. There's no orders of protection. There's no orders, nothing. Their kids were basically kidnapped. So now I won. I won my kids. My kids are doing very well. They don't have a mother anymore. The mother, in shame, can't show her face. And I should be ecstatic and happy that I won and that she's gone out of our life, right? But I'm not happy at all. I'm not happy what the courts did to my sons and my family. And I became an advocate, like Gary and Jim and my goal now is to put Judge Laguercio in jail. And I'm not going to stop until the day I die. And after I die, there's going to be people that will continue. They have everything that I have. I have approximately 30 victims of her. I put a lot of time and energy into this, and now the victims want to speak. I have kids that were victims. I have a boy that was being molested by his family, and Judge Laguercio took that little boy away from the mother, saying that she alienated him, put him with his family that was molesting him. They were laughing at him, telling him, no one's listening to you. As he got older, he was calling hotlines, begging for help, and he finally got back with his mother. That's disgusting and heartbreaking. So if there are any victims of Karen Laguercio, please reach out to Americans for Legal Reform. And there's actually a Facebook page. I just want to make sure I get this right. It's called Disrobing Corrupt Judges, Corrupt Judge Karen Laguercio, Suffolk County, New York. Just recently started, and there's already 2.2 thousand members on that page. It's growing very fast, and I'm having a lot of people reach out to me. Some of them have cases going on right now, and they're free to speak or go public about anything. But I think this is going to be good, and it's going to be a race. Is the district attorney's office going to arrest her or get her off the bench? Is the FBI going to do it, or I'm going to do it? It's a three-way race here. We all know the district attorney's office isn't going to do anything, and the FBI, I was told, is going to do something. As a matter of fact, the agent I spoke to, I gave him my retired handcuffs, and he promised me that he would put those handcuffs on Judge Laguercio if he arrested her, which will make me very happy. Judge Laguercio is not liking this at all. So she sent the district attorney's office to speak to me, tell me to stop. And I told him I'm not going to stop. And we live in America. So I emailed Judge Laguercio. She wanted to speak to me. And of course, we all know she doesn't want to speak to me, and they sent me a cease and desist letter. So I have no other reason to speak to her, except when we're in trial and if we all make it there and we testify. But like I said, if there's any victims of Judge Karen Laguercio, please come forward. Don't be afraid. You're safe. Nothing's going to happen to you. You can't get arrested for it. We live in America, and we need as many victims as possible. And more every day are coming forward, calling me, texting me, sending me private messages. And this needs to be done. And already I feel that the county has forgotten about Tom Spota being arrested and Jim Burke being arrested. And they're just being reckless. But I want to thank you for your time, and thank you, Jim, for letting me talk. And Gary.
It wasn't up to Jim. It was up to Carl.
I'll call. Thank you, Carl. Thank you.
Thanks.
What?
You wanted to say something, Jim?
Sure. Thank you very much. My name is James Kelly, and there were two things that were, two terms that were bounced around tonight. One was corruption. The other was parental alienation. I'm going to try and speak to both relatively quickly. With respect to corruption, corruption is inherently about trying to acquire more money. And what we have right now is fiat currency. We have fiat currency because Ulysses S. Grant stacked the court in late 1869 to overturn the Hepburn decision. And in the legal tender cases, he achieved exactly that result in 1870. So the Supreme Court went from saying you cannot pay a debt with another debt to you can pay a debt with a debt from the United States, provided it's from the United States. So this was back when we didn't have enough money to pay the soldiers. In 1861, the Congress passed the Legal Tender Act, and it finally made its way through to the court system in 1869 and 1870. So what we've got is a situation where money, fiat currency right now, the folding paper that we have in our pockets, is devaluating, it's depreciating, it can buy less each day. And more rights are being deprived as more and more states try and acquire more of that money. Where's one of the areas they get it from? Well, Title IV of the Social Security Act, Federal Incentive Grant, CFDA 93563. New York State domestic relations law says, as justice deserves, and a whole lot of other things, but as justice deserves. And it would seem that justice deserves for a child to have an equal relationship with both parents. Judges don't start from that position. They start from the unbalanced position of presuming a parent is either a custodial parent or a non-custodial parent. And that's not the way the law is written. That's the way they're choosing to interpret it every time. So we've got a situation where the term parental alienation was used. And it's been used a couple of times. It's a term that I particularly hate because it was coined in 1985 by Dr. Richard Gardner. And J.D. Holt wrote an encyclopedic paper afterwards saying that there's no such thing. It's a bad term and it should never be admissible. There is such a thing. There's a dynamic, a very definite dynamic. The name is awful. The paper that Gardner wrote is awful. Worst piece of writing I've ever seen. J.D. Holt wrote an amazing paper. Dr. Amy Baker in 2011, the Borstein decision in Massachusetts, did make it admissible for the very first time in a Daubert hearing. So there's admissibility on it. The problem is the correct term would be identification with the aggressor. That was coined in 1932 by Sandor Ferenczi on the 12th Congress of Psychology in a speech later termed Confusion of the Tongues. So that was converted into English in the 1940s. Now, there have been a lot of different psychologists that have come up and made this alteration of the term or that alteration of the term. Dr. Childress, attachment-based parental alienation, most recently. The reality is the imbalance in the court system dumps 5 concurrent stressors on the child. Those stressors are 2 sets of cognitive dissonance. Now, I don't care male or female. I think it's 93% male, 7% female that ends up experiencing this dynamic, according to the latest numbers that someone provided me. So the dynamic is the same no matter which direction it goes. You've got a situation where the child thinks one parent, well, starts off thinking both parents are loving parents. And then when there's the split, also adds to that in cognitive dissonance where they see the same parent 2 different ways. One parent is also a captor, and one parent is a threat. And it sees each of those parents as a loving parent, or the captor, or the threat. So you've also got 2 sets of ambiguous loss, and there's 2 different types. They get 1 of each type. One type where the parent is physically present but emotionally unavailable. The other type where there's a parent that's emotionally available but physically unavailable. And then you've got the 5th stressor where the child is used as a proxy to hurt the other parent. Well, what ends up happening is this creates stress in the child. Stress is harmful. It's damaging to their brain structure. And so there's naturally occurring defense mechanisms to deal with this. The first one is fight. The child can't fight the parents, not effectively, and get over this. So that one's useless. Flight. Well, that doesn't work either. Freeze. That doesn't work. Fawn. It's the one they don't teach in a lot of psychology courses. Fawn is more correctly called identification with the aggressor. Some people have heard it in 1973 as Stockholm Syndrome. How fast can it happen? In Stockholm, Sweden, adults were taken hostage in a bank for 131 hours. Very stressful situation. When it was all over, none of them wanted to help the police. One of them accepted a marriage proposal. Another one of them turned around and created a defense fund for the hostage takers. 131 hours. These were adults. They were rendered into a childlike situation, but they were adults. When you have children, you've got a situation that is even more easy to manipulate. And of course, the parent has more time to do it. So when the child turns around and has to self-rescue, they resolve the cognitive dissonance first. They turn around and they see the parent they're with as the loving parent and the other parent is the threat, regardless of what the facts say. So now they have a shared delusion, or as Amy Baker would say, a folie à deux, which is just another way of saying a shared delusion. So that settles 2 out of the 5 stressors. The Next thing they do is they turn around and they use narcissistic defense mechanisms, minimization, deflection, lying, ultimately stonewalling, where they cut off the relationship with the parent. And in doing this, what they do is they take on a parentified position and reverse positions in the hierarchy, the family hierarchy, putting the targeted parent down, the non-custodial typically, and putting themselves up on a plane with the other parent. And by doing this, they're no longer the proxy. So then there's the emotional cutoff, and they don't have to continually process that. They do have the two ambiguous losses that it just does not cure. So when you hear about all of the long-term issues with this type of dynamic, that's what it stems from. It stems from the stress related to those two particular stressors as the child grows up. Now, if the child is so lucky as to have full adult autonomy and authority, as to have emotional intelligence, emotional resilience, and makes a habit of processing their emotional pain, then they will seek to reconnect with the other parent and reconsider, were they really the threat? Sometimes there's a reconnection. A lot of times there isn't. So those were the two things that I wanted to speak on. Were there any questions? Gary?
I don't have any.
You don't have any, okay.
So, Jim, you want to just talk about your thing,
Yeah.
your decision?
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Hello, everybody. My name's James Fiegel. First, I want to apologize to the last speaker if I said something that made her feel uncomfortable, but I truly apologize.
No apology necessary. I did not feel uncomfortable.
Thank you. Okay.
That's fine.
Good folks, I'm not even a parent. I don't have any children. But due to the untimely death of my brother, I had to witness what family court did to my nephew. And I can't get over it. I tried many times. I can't do it. So that's why I take this very passionately. And I'll continue to do what I'm doing. And they don't like what I'm doing in family court. They don't like being watched. They don't like being filmed when they come in late. So what did they do? Supervising Judge Karen Lagercio filed a harassment charge against me because I asked her questions, which ended up leading to an order of protection. Only after Sean Paul Reyes, who I appreciate, with over 1 million followers, aired a videotape that showed Judge Lagercio lied in her statement. This is a sitting, supervising family court judge. Could you imagine going in front of that judge? She tried to throw a Marine Corps veteran, a member of the public, in jail and didn't care about it. I was facing jail time. And it's important that you know that those charges were dismissed along with the order of protection. That alone speaks volumes. So I have a federal lawsuit going on, and right now it's coming down to they're trying to dismiss it based on judicial immunity. Well, judicial immunity shouldn't pass when it's out, when somebody is asking questions of a government official in public. And if you look at the complaint, if you go and look at the complaint, which I put up on American for Legal Reform, in her complaint, as a private citizen would do, she left out that she was a judge. No Honorable Karen Lagercio or anything like that. Why did she do that? It wasn't like she had any authority over me. In her complaint, she says, I seen a person known to me holding a sign. So instead of walking into the main entrance, she went to the back. But in the statement, you'll see, and this is where the lie came in. Listen, the district attorney, I call him the great district attorney, Ray Tierney, didn't just dismiss it because I'm Jim Fiegel. He dismissed it because there was something there. You got to remember, when this happened, Judge Lagercio and the courts went to Chief Administrative Judge Krecker. I went in front of 3 different criminal judges, and they all recused. Hey, this isn't a super serious thing, but 3 of them recused. So think about the tax money. After they recused, they had to go, Judge Krecker, Chief Administrative Judge Krecker, had to go to Nassau. Nassau wouldn't get involved in it. So what did they have to do? Then they had to go to Manhattan, who ultimately had to go to the appeals court. Somebody knew that this was tainted, but nobody knew about that video until 5 months later. And then when the video came out, the day after, I got the phone call from my lawyer saying all the charges were dismissed. There's a lot more going on in that family court. And I hope to God none of you are in a position to feel and see what I had to see with my mother, who's 87 years old now. The pain and the anxiety. People are killing themselves because of this. I see it because when I'm in the family court, I say to myself, why am I here? Why am I here? Month after month, year after year. But then I'll have that grandmother or that young kid. And I'm able to help them out a little bit. You know, I want to be the person that I wish I had when I was there. So that's basically what I'm doing. As far as the judicial immunity, this doesn't apply in this case. You know, it's the act. You know, the person that committed, whether she's a judge or whatever her title, she has to be deemed on what she did. And what she did was falsely accuse me of doing something that I didn't. I stayed in the front of that building for over 2.5 minutes. That's not immediately following. The court officer that escorts them into the building went to the back of the building, and I was left there by myself. I didn't feel comfortable. So I waited 2.5 minutes to see how come he didn't come back. It would be impossible for me to know that judge didn't go in the courthouse through the back door. So then when I seen him on his phone, it struck me weird. So I walked back there, and in the video that you see, that Sean Paul, that you'll see in the video, as the officer approached me, I said, good morning. Nobody ever told me leave or anything like that. And as I crossed the threshold of the back of the building, I turned around, and there's Judge Lagercio, locked out. They didn't have their passes or their card to get in the back there. And I asked her one question. And then I get charged like that. So I think it's a disgrace. It's dangerous to have a supervising judge. It makes me think of Judge Matthew G. Hughes. Yes, Judge Matthew G. Hughes. This is a judge who closed the family court that he presides in over 500 times. 500 times. According to my research, good folks, that's more than any other judge in the entire United States. Over 500 times. How could that possibly be? And then you have Referee Amoah. Yes, Referee Andrea Amoah. Just recently, a couple of months ago, I had to make a complaint about her because I was wearing prescription tinted glasses. I have vision problems. And you know, it's amazing, at this particular time, all 3 of these people were on the 2nd floor. So I wrote a little piece about the 2nd floor and what's going on there in family court. But she gave me an ultimatum. Either take them off or get out of the courtroom. So I simply explained to her on the record, I wanted it to be known that I explained that these are prescription glasses. And it is. It's on the record. It's recorded. When I requested to get the recording, because I want you guys to hear how I was treated, I want you to hear the tone, how she treated me, because I simply went into that courtroom. Nowadays, I can go in there with the glasses. There were times when the same court referee, and you got to remember, these people are in line to be judges themselves. She's in line to be a judge. But that would be dangerous because, you could see how she acted prior. And now she lets me go. I have a right to be there. Now I can go into that court. And there are changes I call. American for Legal Reform is making changes. You could go right now and go into any court referee hearing room. That barrier is done. We could go in there. You could go into any courtroom. That barrier is done. So we are making changes. We are making progress. I'll keep you posted on the federal lawsuit. I want to say this. There are good judges. They're great judges. And I can tell because those are the judges that their body language when I come into the courtroom, they don't give you that stern look. They give you that nod or, good morning, Mr. Fiegel. It's just like lawyers. Not all lawyers are bad. I don't believe in that. But I think what happens is a system that left unchecked for year after year. It's a little circle. They all know each other. Karen Lagercio is very big in the Bar Association. And the Women's Bar Association. They have different associations. So they're all connected in different ways there. But for me, somebody got to stand up and say enough's enough. And I don't want any other human being to have to go through what I witnessed and seen. And that's why I do what I do, and I'm very passionate. Again, I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, that concludes our February meeting. Next month, what's her name? Steve Gillian, I think, is going to be speaking at our next meeting. So if you go to our website, you'll see all the information on that next meeting. We just haven't put it up there yet. So thank you, everybody. What's that?
The date is
I don't know.
March 10th.
You know. Good for you. March 10th is the next meeting, and if you go to Americans for Legal Reform, I'll put up about everything that Steve does. Many of you heard him speak at the barbecue this year. Hopefully by the March meeting, we'll have the date for our summer barbecue again.